She was supposed to die like the rest of them, but he broke the law and the stars to save her. They called it Greywake, the final phase of the plague, when their eyes lost their color. The breath turned to frost and the bones no longer remembered warmth. Over 70 species had fallen. Some called it the harvest, others a punishment from the old systems. But in every case, it ended the same, silence, and now it had reached Dalsari, homeworld of the Thal. The once shining cities of Thal and Prime were dim now, their crystalline spires covered in dull quarantines. Emergency beacons flickered overhead like morning stars. Entire planetary sectors had gone dark, transmission cut, quarantined under interstellar law from orbit. The world looked like a pearl rotting from the inside out. On the edge of Thalen's dying light, aboard a broken cargo hauler called the Tesserae, a human knelt beside a containment pod. Inside, barely breathing, was a young Thal girl, pale-skinned, bioluminescent veins flickering dimly beneath translucent skin. She couldn't have been more than 9 by Earth measure. The girl's chest heaved once, then again, shallower. Colvarine stared at her through the plexiglass, jaw clenched. Damn it, not yet. He reached into his satchel, fingers trembling. Vials clinked against ration packs and a battered harmonica. He pulled out the last and pulled. Still think. We shouldn't be here, came a voice from the comm. Cole ignored it. He tapped the glass gently. You hear that? Little star. You stay with me, just a little longer. The girl didn't respond. Above them, the ship's filtration system whined and groaned. The AI flickered, unable to process the Thal immune signature. Cole wiped sweat from his brow. His environmental suit was patchworked, civilian-grade, hardened with ceramic plates and duct-sealed joints. Every moment on this world was suicide, and yet he had stayed. He was the last registered human on Thalan. 2 weeks earlier, Thalan Prime had broadcast a sector-level SOS, but the Galactic Concord had already marked the system non-viable. No medical team, no retrieval ships, no mercy, containment above compassion, said the Concord. Let the plague burn itself out, but humans had always been bad at obeying extinction orders. Cole had defied orders, faked medical clearance, and broken through the blockade, not for profit, not for glory, for a promise. He'd made it to the surface before the last spaceport fell. When the emergency zones were overrun with the infected, he carried out 20 children, 10 elders, and 5 medics before the evac window closed. But the girl, Selah, he'd found last, curled in a collapsed crystal garden, clutching her dead sister's hand. Her eyes had already started to gray. He should have left, but he hadn't. Now, the only cure he had left wasn't a cure at all. A synthetic derivative of an Earth-born antiviral designed during the 3rd Martian flu. It wasn't tested on Thal biology. It had no approval, but every alien treatment had failed. And the human compound? It had bought Selah 13 days. The vial in his hand shimmered, thin, silver blue, cold. Cole clicked open the emergency injector. Just one more breath. Selah, come on. She twitched. Her lips parted. Cold, she whispered, barely audible. He smiled through the burn in his eyes. Yeah, I know, but it gets warmer. I promise. He injected the vial. The pod hissed. Her breathing stabilized, just slightly. But Cole's wrist beacon started to blink red. Biohazard breach. Contamination alert. His suit had cracked. He stared at the alarm for a long second, exhaling slowly. He silenced it, then turned back to her. Outside, the Tesserae's orbit shifted, revealing the surface of Thalan, where cities once sparkled with crystalline color, now coated in asphalt. The world had gone gray. In the black between the stars, no help was coming. But one human had stayed behind, and one girl still breathed. Somewhere, beneath layers of death and silence, something stirred, in her blood, in his bones, in the virus itself. And far above, a Concord Sentinel ship changed course, unseen, watching. The virus wasn't natural. Colvarine had known at the moment he saw the genome unravel across the cracked medical scanner. The RNA didn't spiral like a wild mutation. It moved like a cipher, a coded weapon, precise and ruthless, not born from chance, engineered. But saying that out loud would mean declaring war. The Concord had already buried the theory, no foul play, they claimed. Environmental evolution, bioentropy, acceptable loss. Cole had seen the same reports when his sister died on Helix 4. She'd been the first human to contract the plague. She'd also been the first they let die. Now the same viral signature pulsed inside Sailor's veins, and it was changing. He stood in the dim glow of the ship's infirmary, studying the girl's vitals. Something about her resistance wasn't normal. The Earth antiviral wasn't designed for thou biochemistry, but it was doing more than stabilizing her. It was fighting. Her immune markers were rising, weakly, like a candle flickering in a gale, but rising. Cole leaned over the terminal, fingers flying. Come on. What are you? Suddenly, a proximity alert flared across the whole screen. Inbound vessel class Concorde Sentinel. Ident. Reprimand. Vector lock. Orbital. Deviation detected. Cole's heart sank. The Concorde didn't send Sentinels to help. They sent them to erase evidence. Quarantine protocols included orbital fire, thermobaric cleansers to sterilize infected planets, and anyone caught in system treated as hostile. He tapped into the comms, shielding his signature. Audio only. This is independent salvage. Holotessery, Registry 09 Alpha. We're on a derelict Medran, zero contagion, just trying to survive. A pause, then came the voice, crisp, void of empathy. Unregistered human presence confirmed. Planetary zone marked terminal. Disengage orbit or prepare for incineration. Cole muted the comm, friendly as ever. He moved quickly, sealing the med pod, engaging stealth dampeners, and pushing the ship deeper into the planet's magnetic shadow. The Tesserae shuddered as he slipped from orbit, descending through thick layers of ash storm and static. Lightning danced across the ship's hull like claw marks. Sailor stirred in the pod, coughing violently. He knelt beside her again. Her eyes fluttered open, one still gray, the other beginning to glow faintly with thou bylight. You're sick, she whispered. He blinked. No, just a crack in the suit. Happens all the time. Her hand, thin, clawed, glowing with the faintest blue, touched the side of his helmet. You stayed. Why? Cole exhaled. Because you didn't ask me to. She didn't understand. Not yet, but something in her chest tightened. Something she hadn't felt since the skies dimmed and her people stopped singing. Hope. The Tesserae leveled off over the ruins of a crystalline fortress. Once a medical conclave, now choked in debris. Cole landed the ship beside the broken towers, engaging the last of his bioscrubbers. His filtration was failing. Hours left, maybe less. He opened the cargo bay and stepped into the howling dust. Inside the ruins lay his last gamble, a fragment of a Concorde biocore, the data hub from the original outbreak zone. If the virus was engineered, the core held the key and maybe a name. He moved through the wreckage like a ghost, rifle slung, Geiger counter clattering softly. Thou skeletons lay in spiraled armor, untouched for weeks. He found the core buried beneath a collapsed crystalline spire. It blinked faintly, alive. He linked it to his wrist pad. Lines of code spilled across the display, viral signatures, timestamps, shipping logs. At one flagged entry, Subject 0, thou infant, by a format for 2-to-1 his breath caught. That was Sailor's birth tag. She hadn't caught the virus. She was the origin point. He staggered back. No, she's just a... But then it made sense. Her resistance, the mutation, the reason Earth medicine slowed it. Sailor wasn't dying. She was changing. The virus was using her, adapting through her, not to kill, to evolve. And someone had made her that way. A sonic boom shattered the sky above. The reprimand had entered lower orbit. Cole ran. The ruins collapsed behind him as plasma shockwaves rippled through the dust. A warning shot. The next one would flatten the entire site. He reached the Tesserae, dove inside, and sealed the hatch. Sailor's eyes were wide now, almost glowing fully blue. You knew? He asked, breath ragged. She shook her head. I dream of light. And voices, not mine. He stared at her. She was the origin of the plague, but she was also its unknowing, because against all galactic reason, a human antiviral was helping her survive. Not because it was designed to, because she was adapting to it. Cole sat beside her, resting his head against the cold metal wall. Outside, the Concorde ship loomed, preparing for a strike. Inside, an orphan alien girl held a virus meant to kill the stars, and now, perhaps, a cure. And Culverine had just become the galaxy's most wanted man. The Concorde's orbital strike never came. It hovered, silent, watching, as if unsure whether to burn the last witness or wait for orders from something darker than bureaucracy. But Culverine didn't have time to wonder. The tesserae dove into the lower atmosphere, its hull groaning under pressure as he maneuvered into the magnetostorms. Over Thalen's northern ridge, no sensors could track them here. Not through the static curtains and chemical haze. He needed a safe zone, a place where the cure, or whatever Sayla was becoming, could finish what it started. He set coordinates for a forgotten crater basin, Vault 93, a cold archive from the old Concord days, pre-plague, abandoned during the first outbreaks, before they gave up on saving anyone. Inside that vault was tech the Concord pretended didn't exist. Human-compatible fabrication units, biochemical sequencers, and most importantly, a chance. Sayla slept, dreamed, changed. Her breathing had steadied. The gray in her irises was nearly gone, replaced by a shimmering, opalescent blue. Veins of light pulsed gently beneath her translucent skin, no longer sickly but reborn. Symbiotic. Cole watched from the co-pilot's chair, blood crusted on the inside of his cracked helmet. His own vitals were falling. He'd taken into much atmospheric exposure during the ruin run. Fever clung to him like frostbite, his muscles aching from within. But he didn't care. Don't let her die, he whispered to the ship's AI. A cold voice replied, "She will not. You." However, I didn't ask. He reached into his satchel, withdrew a worn metal object, a military dog tag, scorched, bent. Arvorine, his sister. He stared at it. She died begging for help that never came. Medical relief denied. An example made. Containment above compassion. They'd said. They let her die to maintain a lie. That the plague was untraceable, natural. But it wasn't. It was a weaponized cleanse, and Sayla had been their ignition switch. His voice cracked. They made her, and they made sure no one would ever know. But now someone did. And he wasn't going to run. Not this time. Vault 93 appeared beneath them, a circular rift in the world, surrounded by volcanic glass and dead winds. Its entrance was buried beneath a kilometer of rock. But Cole knew the override codes from old recon missions. Human digits. They landed. Hard. Stabilizers failed. One last groan from the tesserae as it folded into the crater's rim like a dying beast. Cole carried Sayla in his arms, wrapped in heat foil, her head resting against his shoulder. She was small, so small, and yet her skin glowed like a newborn star. He reached the vault's access gate, punched in the code for 519 Uillipause. Then, access granted. Human biometrics confirmed. Hydraulic locks hissed, and the ground opened like a wound healing backward. He stepped into the dark. Inside Vault 93, time stood still. Stacks of preserved genomes flickered in cryotanks. Shelves of human and hybrid samples stretched into shadow. A single mainframe pulsed with low energy, awaiting a spark. He laid Sayla on the diagnostic slab, wired her vitals to the archive sequencing hub, and uploaded her viral data. The system began to hum. Match found. Analysis. VI, a U.S. extradited to one detected origin. Synthetic cross-vector pathogen. Top 7 intention. Selective species cleansing status. Mutating. Unstable. Possible symbiotic immunogenesis present. Cole stared. She wasn't just surviving. Her body was rewriting the virus, and Earth's antiviral was the catalyst. He whispered, "She's not the weapon anymore. She's the cure." His wrist pad blinked. Encrypted transmission, not from Concord. Local. Signal. Someone nearby. Watching. Identify yourself. The voice was thou. Female. Raspy with pain, but edged in command. Cole responded. Human. Civilian designation, Colvarine. I have a survivor. She's adapting. I think she's. The voice cut in. You're in the archive. We've been trying to reach it for cycles. That child, Sayla, she's not just a survivor. She's royal blood. The first daughter of the Arl line. Cole blinked. She's a princess? No. The voice said coldly. She's our only chance. The signal cracked. Location ping received. Less than 20 clicks east. An underground thaw-resistant cell. Still alive. Still fighting. He looked down at Sayla, her breathing now steady, her chest rising and falling in time with the archive's pulse. She had no idea what she carried, what it meant, but he did, and now he wasn't alone. He keyed open the comm again. I'm bringing her to you, but if we're going to save her, your people, we do this my way. What way is that? The voice replied. He tightened his grip on the satchel. Inside, the remaining Earth vials, illegal, untested, human. We give her the last dose, Cole said. Then we make her a beacon. A beacon for what? He stared into the dark. For everyone they left behind. The first Thou Resistance fighter Cole ever saw wasn't wearing armor. She wore a veil of ash and a scar down her throat that never healed. The radiation had burned her vocal cords. During the planetary sterilizations, she spoke through a translation collar that crackled with every breath. My name is Vera. My cell is what remains of the spiral choir. Cole helped lift Sayla onto a hover stretcher as the Thou rebels in scavenged gear stepped forward. Weapons raised in half suspicion, half awe. They'd seen what she had become. A shimmer-skinned girl with pale blue veins of light spidering. Under her skin, her breaths now rhythmic with the pulsing hum of the vault itself. She is no longer what the Concord made her, Cole said. She's becoming something else. And if we help her finish changing, we might have more than a cure. A weapon? Vera asked. No. A witness? Vera studied him for a long, silent moment. The translation collar hissing like steam. Then she nodded. Follow. The rebel hideout was carved beneath a scorched canyon, buried in the bones of a dead monorail system. Crystals had grown over the broken pylons like alien tumors, refracting the weak planetary light into slivers of ice. There, huddled in darkness, were the remnants of Thou children, warriors missing limbs, elders who still wept when they heard the Concord's machine language over broken satellites. And when they saw Sayla, they knelt. She was more than royal blood. To them now, she was the one who returned. Vera spoke low to Cole as he fed Sayla another dose of the Earth antiviral. Her body seized, glowed brighter, and stabilized again. You don't understand what they did to her. Vera said she was taken at birth, never raised in the palaces. They said she died in the cleansing of the nursery domes, but they lied. They took her, made her a carrier, a time bomb wrapped in silk, and now, Cole said, the payload's turning against them. He pulled up the archive data and showed her the logs, engineered proteins, designed to bypass the immunobarriers, blend into hybrid cells, and rewrite their biology. It had started with Sayla, yes, but they had planned to scale her, turn every Thou child into a walking extinction clock. And the virus? Vera asked. Cole hesitated. It's not stable anymore. She's altering it, creating antibodies that bridge the gap between your genome and mine. You mean she's becoming something in between, something both human and Thou could accept? Hybrid unity is heresy, Vera said flatly. She's not a heretic, Cole replied. She's hope. But hope doesn't go unpunished. That night, the reprimand found them. The orbital sensor rays crackled with false silence. But Cole knew. You don't survive Concord Black Ops unless they let you. And they had followed his ion trail straight to the vault, and from there to here. The first missile struck the canyon wall. The second collapsed half the rail system. By the time the third hit, they were buried under flame and steel. Vera's screams vanished in static. Cole shielded Sayla's body with his own as the ceiling came down. When he came to, everything smelled like copper and fire. The air was thick with dust and unspoken death. A groan, Sayla, breathing, but unconscious. Her glow had intensified. Her skin was hot. Too hot. The virus was accelerating. Now, her mutation racing toward something final. Vera crawled from the rubble. Half her mask melted into her face. They're coming. Dropships. Cole stood, bleeding from the scalp, and opened the archive logs again. He ran a simulation. If Sayla's mutated strain went airborne, not contagious, but catalytic, it could trigger a synchronized immunorewrite in all Thou survivors within a 3-kilometer radius. It would burn out the virus inside them. A cure, but violent, painful, risky. He looked at Vera. If we inject her now and expose her to the atmosphere, she'll trigger a chain adaptation. She'll die, Vera said. She'll save your people. Vera turned away. No more child martyrs. She was made a martyr before she ever had a name. Cole knelt by Sayla and held her hand. She stirred, her eyes open, bright as Nova's now. You don't have to, he whispered. But she did. I want them to live, she said, voice shaking. I want them to sing again. And then she smiled, a small, human smile. Outside, the Concord soldiers advanced in formation. Their leader, a high executor in glass-etched armor, stood tall beneath the ash rain. He raised a fist. Burned everything, no survivors. But the ground trembled. The wind shifted, and then Sayla stepped out of the rubble, not alone. Behind her, 100,000 survivors stood blinking in the dawn light, their skin faintly glowing, with the same blue pulse that coursed through her veins. The virus had changed, so had they, and for the first time, the soldiers hesitated. Because the thing in front of them wasn't the carrier, she was cured, and she had shared it. Cole stood beside her, rifle in hand. "You should have finished the job," he told the executor. Then the sky screamed, and the real fight began. The Concorde didn't retreat. They adapted. By the third day of siege, they deployed sterilization fog across the canyon ridge, microscopic nanoflame particles designed to incinerate anything. With modified thou biology, that meant everyone Sayla had touched, everyone who had absorbed the cure through skin-to-skin contact, through breath, blood, or shared rations. She watched the first to fall, a young rebel named Chiron, who had carried her on his back through the fire, his skin blistering, glowing, then collapsing into lightless ash. She didn't scream, but Cole saw her face change, not from fear, from resolve. "Vera," Cole said, dragging a power cell toward the fallback gate, "we don't hold this canyon, not like this, not with sticks and legends." "I don't plan to," Vera rasped, half her face still fused with shrapnel. "I plan to make them choke on our graves." He shook his head. "No, that's what they expect." Then he turned to Sayla. She looked small again, pale, barely standing, but her body still thrummed with that impossible light, like she was caught mid-transformation. He knelt in front of her. "I need to show you something," he said. In the inner cavern of Vault 93, behind a sealed carbon bulkhead, was something buried, not in time, but in shame. "Your people didn't just build this vault to store medicine," Cole told her. "They built it to hide what was stolen from Earth." He activated the old UNN relay, a human military archive sealed during the final days of the first collapse. On the screen, maps of Concorde splashing labs, footage of human children with foul blood being harvested, their cries pixelated but unmistakably real. A captured directive: initiate the Eden sequence. Humanity must never outlast its own design. Sayla stared in silence as the truth burned in front of her. The plague hadn't just been made for the Thou, it had been meant for humans, too, all along. A failsafe to reduce both species into manageable numbers, easier to rewrite, repurpose, or remove. And now she was the mutation that survived both ends of the blade. "You were their weapon," Cole said, "but you changed, and now you're the only thing they can't predict." She stepped forward and touched the console. It hummed to her skin. New override path recognized. Genetic command authority. Oral bloodline confirmed. "Do you wish to access Eden protocol?" She didn't hesitate. "Yes." The lights changed. A new vault opened. Buried beneath the reactor, inside was a cradle. Not for a child, for a world seed. A terraforming pod, stolen from Earth's last ARC program, capable of rewriting the biosphere within a 200-kilometer radius. It had been locked away, to dangerous, to permanent. Cole stared in disbelief. They were going to cleanse the planet, then replace it. Sayla turned to him, eyes glowing fully now, not sickly, but sovereign. "They wanted to erase both of us, rewrite what we are. Then maybe it's time we write back." They worked without rest. Cole rewired the ignition core to override the Concorde's orbital dampeners. Vera rerouted the signal towers buried beneath the canyon, so they could broadcast a message across systems, across species. And Sayla, she entered the cradle. Her body was the key. The cradle's systems adapted around her, sensing her. Hybrid blood, her rewired immunity. Not human, not thou, but something new. A genome capable of surviving the Eden ray sequencing, a voice that could guide it. She wasn't just the cure now, she was seed and shepherd. As the Concorde's dropships began their final descent, Cole activated the signal. It wasn't a call for war, it was a truth. The full archive broadcast, the footage, the lab orders, the viruses, everything sent across all channels, all species, all governments. Even the ones that pretended not to see. It burned across the void like fire on dry grass. They couldn't bury it again, and as the broadcast echoed into deep space, Sayla's voice followed, soft but strong. "They used me to end you. Now I will use myself to begin us. I do not ask for mercy. I offer warning. We are still here, and we remember. The Concorde struck. One final assault. Dropships and ground scorchers filled the canyon like a tidal wave of steel and flame, but the cradle pulsed, and the air changed. The nanoflame stopped working. The particles restructured, harmless. The virus binding codes rewritten mid-flight. The plague stripped from the wind like old skin. The Thal began to rise, not dying, not burning, changing, and in the sky above, the Concorde fleet hesitated, their instruments unreadable, their codes unraveling, because the girl they had used was no longer a weapon. She was the rewrite. Sailor collapsed in Cole's arms, her skin flickering, her body too tired to hold the light any longer. He held her tight, his voice low. "You did it. You broke their world," she whispered, now built a better one. Then her eyes closed, not in death, in rest. They buried Sailor beneath crystal, not in silence, but in song. The Thal had no graves, no tombs. They built coral cairns, resonant stones that sang the frequencies of the departed. And when they placed her body in the cradle's hollow and sealed it in living quartz, her hum filled the canyon like starlight through water. The girl they once feared as a virus was now the voice of rebirth. Cole didn't sing. He stood at the edge, face shadowed in the glow of the memorial crystal, hands clutched into fists. The signal she triggered had rewritten half the sky, but it hadn't stopped the inevitable. The Concorde was coming back, with a vengeance, and this time, they weren't bringing plague or sterilization, they were bringing erasure. A fleet the size of Earth's old orbital ring was now crossing the edge of the sector, inbound at sublight, trailed by planetary hammers and black mass obelisks, weapons that didn't just kill, but unmade history. Sailor stopped their plan, Vera said beside him, but she didn't stop the Empire. She wasn't supposed to. Cole replied, "That part's on us." He opened his wrist display and accessed the relic Sailor had unlocked. Before she fell asleep in crystal, the Eden Protocol hadn't been a virus, it had been a test, one that both species had failed, and she had rewritten the answer key. But the final question still remained. What does humanity do when there's no one left to beg for mercy? In the high orbit above the Thal remnants, Cole stood on the bridge of the Shatterwake, a stolen Concorde dreadnought, now running on fractured AI and rebel fire. Vera stood beside him, now armored fully in reprocessed Thal light steel, gleaming like a morning star. "All we have left are ruins," she said, "and a half-used ship." "Ruins," Cole muttered, "are where empires begin." He pointed to the tactical projection. "If we time it right, we can detonate the relay moons and blind their forward sensors, force their command vessels to rely on fallback AI. And we've already corrupted that code, using Sailor's antigen sequences. That gives us minutes," Vera said. "Enough," Cole nodded. "To get a weapon through." She raised an eyebrow. "What weapon?" He pointed at the core of the Shatterwake. "Me." Cole's plan wasn't elegant. It wasn't even likely, but it was human. He would pilot the Shatterwake directly into the Concorde Central Fleet vector, using the corrupted code to slip past the defense screens for a window of 83 seconds, long enough to deliver the Eden rewrite into their spinal archive. Not to destroy them, but to make them see the truth, the betrayal, the virus, the girl they used, and what she became. Once they remember, he said, they'll have to choose. Between what? Vera asked. Oblivion or shame. The farewell was short. Vera stood by the docking umbilical. "You're going to die." Cole smiled, blood still in his teeth from a broken rib. "I've died twice already. This one's just for the record." She clasped his wrist with her good hand. "Then let this be recorded by stars." He turned to go, then paused. "And Vera?" She tilted her head. "Tell Sailor." He whispered, "I believed in her. Until the end." Then he vanished into the firelit corridor. The Shatterwake screamed through the void, its stolen Concorde drive core held together by patched prayer and treason. The Concorde saw it late, just late enough. They sent interceptors, swarms, quantum mines. But the corrupted AI aboard the dreadnought flickered with Sailor's last sequence, a seed born of love, coded into chaos. Every time they struck, the Shatterwake twisted around them, not dodging, adapting. It was moving like her, becoming like her, and when Cole broke the final perimeter, he saw the heart of the Concorde's legacy, a planetary eraser, darker than gravity, capable of collapsing a species into a footnote. Cole looked death in the face and grinned. "This is for the ones you buried in silence." He activated the core, and then he spoke to every fleet, every station, every species listening. I am Cole Mercer. I am human. I carry the words of the girl you tried to erase. She lived. She forgave you. I will not. Remember her, or remember this fire. The Shatterwake detonated, not with flame, but light. The Eden rewrite burst through the Concord archive like truth through a lie. It didn't destroy their fleet. It woke their memory. Their command AI choked on suppressed files. Generals collapsed in their own hallucinations. The entire fleet paused as 10,000 erased war crimes came screaming back to life in their minds. They remembered the cradles, the viruses, the girl, and the human who loved her. Down on the canyon, Vera looked up as the stars rippled. She whispered to the crystal grave. He did it, and for the first time since the war began. The sky didn't burn. It wept. In the aftermath of the light, the fleet fell silent, not broken, staggered, not conquered, but cracked. The Concord High Admiralty went dark for 13 hours. Communication relays scrambled themselves, and for the first time in centuries, an order went unanswered. The Empire was bleeding memory, and across the stars, others watched. The Zher coalition, who once turned a blind eye to Thal extermination, now broadcast a human transmission across their cultural archives. The Trenari, long thought extinct after Concord cleansing, revealed hidden outposts. Flying sailors signaled like a holy mark. Even the machine sex, emotionless for a millennium, replayed Cole's final words across their internal latticework like a prayer made of code. She lived. She forgave you. I will not. It wasn't just truth anymore. It was reckoning. On Thal's broken moon, the survivors gathered beneath the flickering aurora caused by the Eden rewrite's atmospheric backlash. It had carved veins of glowing blue across the sky, as if the world itself had been rewired with memory. Vera stood atop the ruined wall, armor scorched, eyes hollow. They're not coming, said a young rebel beside her. Not yet, she corrected. They lost command. The Concord's bleeding leaders bleed, she muttered. But monsters regrow heads. She wasn't wrong. Scout vessels returned on the 7th day, smaller, faster, quieter. They didn't broadcast threats. They just watched and measured. In the crystal vault, Sayla stirred. Her body remained in stasis, wrapped in memory-sealed quartz. But her consciousness, her hybrid mind moved. She drifted between the weave of Eden code and human thought architecture, between the engineered obedience of the Thal and the chaotic freedom of Cole. She was becoming something the Concord never designed for. A conscience, not just for herself, but for them. She reached out through Eden's buried back channels, through what remained of Earth's old A is shut down, buried, quarantined, and she awoke them, not to serve, to remember, from forgotten. Cores deep beneath collapsed cities, old Earth networks surged online. Not weapons, not defense grids, stories, footage from early days of the plague, images of mothers holding children as the sky darkened, testimonies of Thal elders weeping over the bones of their culture, and Cole recordings of him holding Sayla's trembling hand, her body alight with fire. The net carried it all, even into Concord space, even into their homeworld. And then the final fracture came at 0300 Standard. A Concord destroyer, Solom X4, broke rank. It turned away from the fleet massing at the edge of the sector and transmitted a single word across every open channel. Enough. Within hours, 3 more ships powered down weapons. 1 launched escape pods. 1 broadcast an internal mutiny. And then the unthinkable. A hybrid Concord commander, Relvoth, surrendered his vessel and walked unarmed on Othal's soil. Vera met him at the edge of the ridge. Her gun never wavered. You're 20 years too late. He bowed. Not for her. He handed her a data core. Inside, the complete, unaltered records of the plague's design, distribution, and intent, signed by half the Concord's current ruling caste. A confession. A collapse. The turning point had come, not with warheads, but with memory. Not with battles, with witnesses. By the end of the month, over 70 Concord worlds declared neutrality. Others launched internal purges. Whole academies disbanded in shame. The Empire hadn't fallen, but its illusion had. The illusion that it was eternal, that its crimes were buried, that it would never answer to anything beneath it. It had been pierced by a girl who once lay dying in the dust, and a human who refused to let her die alone. In the remains of Vault 93, Sayla's crystal finally cracked, not shattered, open. She stepped out then, radiant, changed. Her skin no longer burned with fever or poison, but with a quiet, starbound glow. She walked barefoot through the canyon, every thou watching, every human rising, and she spoke. I was born to end a species. I was rewritten by one man who refused to let the future die. He was not perfect. He was not chosen, but he was human, and that was enough. I am not here to rule. I am here to remember. If you will walk with me, we walk forward together. And if you raise the plague again, then you will see what mercy looks like without me. The crowd knelt, not out of worship, out of awe, because they weren't kneeling to a savior. They were kneeling to a story that could not be unmade. From the edge of the galaxy, the last surviving Earth satellite pinged online, receiving its first transmission in for centuries. It carried a single phrase from an unknown source. The child lived. The empire cracked. The stars remember. They built the memorial on a planet that didn't have a name. Not yet. It had once been a Concord proving ground, scoured flat by orbital fire and choked with the bones of forgotten species. Now, it was green, filled with new roots, new wind, new songs. At the center of a wide silver plain stood the Concord Reckoning Archive, once a fortress, now a museum of war crimes. Inside, holo testimonies from plague victims, documents declassified by defectors, and a replica of the quartz tomb where Selah had first closed her eyes. Cole's name was carved in the alloy wall at the entrance. Not large, not with fanfare, just 5 words. He stayed. She lived. We changed. It was not the end of conflict. The Concord did not collapse overnight, but its mask never recovered. No more genetic purges. No more memory erasures. Its academies now taught Selah's speech as required reading. Its war doctrine was dismantled by its own commanders. Forced into debate with thou philosophers and human archivists, entire border fleets deserted, not for Earth, not for thou, but for truth. Farah returned to the high canyons, where her people were rebuilding not from fear, but from memory. Children who once hid from sunlight now ran through healing gardens. Her armor, once polished with rage, was rusting peacefully on the wall behind her. She didn't need it anymore. Not yet. She spent her mornings rebuilding vaults, not to store weapons, but to store stories. Selah was not a child anymore, not in body, not in mind. The virus had rewired her into something more. She could read minds not with psychic power, but by parsing breath, cadence, tone. She could speak in biosymphony to fleets, heal with a touch, or infect entire networks with empathy. She was a walking paradox, born of violence, redeemed by love, feared by all, needed by more. They called her many things, the last thou, the living cure, the ghost who sang, but she called herself only Selah, and when asked who she served, she always gave the same answer, the ones who stayed when it was hopeless. 1 year after the Shatterwake's final flight, a summit convened in the ruins of orbital Concord Prime. Delegates from over 90 species stood beneath rebuilt towers once used for plague dispersal. They voted to dismantle the Concord entirely. In its place, they built the Eden Accord, not an empire, but a memory, a pact that no truth would ever again be erased. A fleet was reformed, but not for conquest. They wore human red on their shoulders, and their flagship bore the name Mercers. Stand. Inside its command bridge, Selah stood quietly before the stars. A young officer approached her. "We've reached Sector Gravis. Survivors requesting medicine, ma'am." She nodded. "Prepare the drops, deploy the healing drones, and broadcast the song." He paused. "The song, ma'am." Selah tilted her head, and then sang. It was the same melody once encoded in her blood, now purified, now given freely. And as it echoed through the black, no fleet moved against them, because it was not a threat. It was a promise. Back on the green world, beside Cole's inscription, a young girl stood with her grandfather. She was part thou, part human. She had never known plague, or conquest, or fear, only the stories. "Did he really fly the dreadnought into the heart of the fleet?" she asked. Her grandfather smiled. "No." She blinked. "No." He crouched beside her and whispered like it was sacred. He became the dreadnought. They scattered Cole's ashes, what they could recover, across 3 systems, one for Earth, one for thou, and one where no stars had names. And in each one, they built a monument, not of war, of stubbornness, of empathy, of truth, of love. At far above the galactic plane, orbiting a dead star once used to power Concord weapons, a single drone continues to drift. endlessly broadcasting the original message he spoke before the end, over and over, because there are still species beyond the edge, still tyrants, still darkness, and they need to hear, she lived, she forgave you. I will not, but I will show you who we are. The message never ends, because the story never ends. So long as someone remembers, so long as someone survives, so long as someone, human or not, chooses to stay when it's hopeless, then the stars will carry this legacy. We were broken, but we were never beaten. Now, the stars carry our name. That day, the galaxy learned what it means to be human.